Hi, Shelby Joe Long here today with the Genius Entrepreneur Podcast. Excited as we continue to build this series to feature amazing women in the construction industry as we build to this event that I'm hosting in Missoula, Montana here in May of 2025. And we have the conversation about women in construction and about changes in the construction industry and about how we can move forward and how we can address some of these challenges. Last week, I had the opportunity to meet Jessica Murphy, who is a litigator in the world of construction, and I'm excited to hear about more of her experience, and I'm excited to have her on the podcast today. So, Jess, welcome to the interview today.
Thanks so much, Shelby. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. So can you tell us, you are a partner in a law firm in Massachusetts? There's a lot of names, so I don't want to mess it up. So I'll let you tell it. But it is, I, I think women in construction, we talked about the number, it's about 14%, but I think it's even less when it comes to litigators and lawyers female lawyers in the construction industry. So I'm excited to hear about your story and your experience. So can you just give us a introduction?
Absolutely. I'm actually just into my second decade, coming into 20 years as a construction attorney. Not how I started out, just in terms of coming into this and wanting to be a general litigator. Loved school, loved studying. My background is more that my father, when he found out I was born, looked at me, said she's healthy, and said, "Great, I'm going to go start my own construction company." So I literally grew up around this as a young girl, always encouraged to go out and enjoy, just messing around really in my dad's shop. So that's always been an opportunity for me that I loved. And as I've gotten older, enjoyed school. When I got out to become an attorney, it really was a little bit of a slow progression to get into construction law. Um, but it's been fantastic. So I had this initial case that got me there, which was I was doing general litigation. And this case involved a high rise during a storm. A sprinkler line had burst, caused hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage, just high pressure water being pushed into this building. And I got the case and I was working it up. And I pulled out the plans and I said, I think the problem is the door swing goes the wrong way. It was designed this way improperly, but it was constructed per the designs. And everyone just looked at me. And I was like, well, I took CAD drafting and design in high school, and my dad's a builder. So I know how to read a set of plans. So that really kicked it off. And I would say a majority of the past 20 years that I've been practicing has been as a construction lawyer, primarily doing litigation disputes, risk assessment. I love it. I'm currently at Tarlow Breed, Hart and Rogers in Boston, and just have the greatest of opportunity here to build a fantastic construction practice with some great attorneys.
Yeah, that's great. I want to back up a little bit. What brought you into law?
If you ask around, I think people will say when I was about 5, I decided I wanted to get into law.
Yeah.
I like to argue. I like to win, but I just like thinking on my feet. One thing that I absolutely love about the law is that you can know what a breach of contract is. It's a very simple 4 elements to prove a breach of contract, but every single breach of contract case I've taken in my career has been different. I've had the opportunity to get involved and work on behalf of a paving company. I can tell you all the steps that are required for paving a road, how that's different from paving a parking lot. I worked for underground water utility companies, learned about that, to even just some general business disputes. So I love the variety of it, that I can be an expert in the law, but each case is different. And really, so many of the people I represent remind me of my father. Construction companies and people who are well-intentioned, want to do the job right, and sometimes find themselves in the wrong end of a dispute.
Yeah. Yeah, that's we share a similar desire to speak and to argue and to do all of those things. So I was in the college debate world, and so that many of my colleagues went on to be lawyers, and I chose the professor route and the consulting route. So, but that's a good
I was
thing.
a mock trial person in high school myself.
Yes.
So like
Nice.
that, I like the intellectual pursuit, but certainly when I get the opportunity to go out to a job site and take a look at a project, that's always a lot of fun too. It's a nice mix between the two. But to your point that you had mentioned earlier, women in construction currently represent about 14% of the workforce. And certainly within that, there are less women in trades than 14%. It's less women in the white collar professions like insurance and banking and law. So I do like to encourage people to take a look at something like this. And it is encouraging as I look around and I get new cases, I see that the junior associate on the case on the other side might be a woman attorney. So
Yeah.
those are great changes to see coming up, because it certainly wasn't that way when I started 20 years ago.
Sure. And that was not that long ago, but it's made some leaps, but not probably as big of leaps as that we'd like to see. Well, I think I want to go back to your experience, and I feel that, as I've talked to a few people in the construction industry just recently, I feel that that's such a creative and a building, like you're a builder, you like to see a product, and you just like to see plans come to life. And I feel that you have that in your background, especially with your dad being in construction and having his own business and having that creative side. But then on the lawyer side, making sure that it's right and the contracts are followed, and that the specific, because I would imagine, and I don't know this, but I would imagine so much is lost in translation between the architect and the designer and and the construction manager. So I would imagine that those conflicts are pretty common.
They are. When you talk about the great thing that my dad brings, I like to tell people that I always have a former assistant building inspector on call for the price of a hug.
Yeah.
So, always able to pick up the phone. What's been great over time is becoming a part of women in construction groups, so that now my reach is much greater when I've got a question of expertise in plumbing or in electrical, and being able to talk to people about that. But I like to tell people, with my dad's experience and having worked out in the shop with him, having redone his house and my brother's house, that I can roof a roof and I can sue the person who got the roof wrong. So it's a
Right.
nice of my two skills, I think.
Yeah. I think that speaks to your genius and what you have in you, and then also your experience to go along with that. So I think that's I think that's amazing. What would you say, being a woman in this industry, this male populated, more males than women than females industry, what would you say some of the biggest challenges that you have? Do you have a good story about some challenges that maybe you've come up within the industry in the past 20 years?
Absolutely. Those are abound.
Yes.
I think what it comes down to is that as a young attorney, as a young woman in a room full of construction owners and warring subcontractors, that it's hard to sometimes get people to understand that I know what I'm talking about. And I fell into the trap, I think, early on, of then becoming very loud and becoming, very obstinate in my point. I've mellowed over 20 years. As the grays have come in, I think it's a little bit easier to have people see that I know what I'm talking about. And I've also come to terms with, I don't know everything. And certainly asking questions is really important. As it comes around full circle, I have no problem saying I'm not the smartest person in the room on a particular topic. So educate me. I've got great questions. I love giving a presentation I've done for a couple of times now on questions about questions. what do you need to know? What can you ask? And how do you get comfortable asking questions? Because it does feel a little intimidating when you stick your hand up and you say, I don't know something.
Yeah.
So that's been, I think, a shift in how I've done it. But I also find that it's really about reading the people that you're in the meeting in the room with, because I've had those meetings where I walked in with my client and, the vice president of the company and the owner, and we're sitting on one side of the table, and everybody else in the room is a man, and they're not talking to me, and they're talking right over me. I've had people, now we've got the term gaslight, but it just used to be, I talked over you and what you said didn't matter. I'm going to change the narrative.
Yeah.
And very proud of myself that there have been a number of opportunities where I stood up and I said, if you're not willing to talk to me, I'm conducting the meeting, then we don't need to have the meeting. I can see you in court, which is great. It is that classic, fine, if we don't want to negotiate this, I'll see you in court.
Yeah.
And I think, my client, that one particular time it happened, the other side left. They weren't able to adjust how they were treating me. So I called an end to the meeting. I closed the door, turned around, I looked at my client, and I said, I hope that was okay. But, you are a principled guy. You run a great company. And if he wasn't going to treat me respectfully, I don't think we were going to get the deal we wanted. And I said, I think that made a good point. He said, absolutely, I loved it. So I find it is funny because sometimes there is a difficulty in connecting with everybody in construction, but I've always found that my clients, as soon as I let them know my dad's a contractor, as soon as I let them know that, I can swear with the best of them and I'm not offended, it just seems to break down some barriers. And I've never had a problem with a client. So that's great. And I think it really goes to, over time, I've become a lot more comfortable with myself and saying it's okay to show up on a job site in a pair of heels. If I'm there for a meeting, it's okay to look nice, and not to feel like I have to be one of the guys and just simply brash all the time. So I've come into myself, and I think that's certainly something that women in any industry really need to get comfortable with, is owning the space that they're in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, that's not unique to the construction industry, but it's if 14%, that's a little bit different than many other industries. But that's I don't know, that's something as you kind of get your moxie as you've been around a little bit. But also we might become, because being in male populated, male dominated industries for a very, being in C-suite leadership, just in any companies too, there are much less women in C-suite leadership in large companies than there are men. And so it's being in that space and wondering how long it's going to take before it's like, oh, she does know construction, right? And that maybe there's that preconceived notion that a woman doesn't know much about construction, and then, oh, she does, and you have to like prove yourself before that happens. So I just kind of wonder how long that's going to take.
Certainly something I see. But with my love of the law in general, one of the things I, like a lot of people, really got interested in Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg over the past 5 or 10 years. And I was fortunate to be able to give a speech on her and her impact to a group of women in construction last time we had a conference down in DC. What I loved about that is thinking about, in her youth, in her first few jobs, she had to hide her pregnancy, and she kept it under wraps for a while. It's something that you see a lot with women in construction. So these are, I think, universal themes, but it's becoming less. And I have really high hopes that in the next generation or two, you'll start to see it becoming a lot more routine that women decide to go to school, graduate with a degree in construction management, and that the women we are adding to the 14% of women in construction are going to be construction litigators, project managers. I'm so proud of some of the younger women in their 30s who I've gotten to know through the National Association of Women in Construction, who are running job sites.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic opportunity, and it shows that there is growth and opportunity there, and supporting those women, and supporting women as they grow in any industry, of course. I think it's fantastic. I think the old adage of when you get to the top, send the elevator back down. Find ways to reach out to those women and support them.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think? And you've got kids, yeah, young kids?
I've got two young teenagers. My daughter's 12 and my son's 14.
I also have a couple of young kids. What do you think for that generation? What kind of conversations do you think we should be having about? Do we encourage? Uh, do they know about the opportunities? What's your feeling about that? Is that something that, because just talk about like the labor force issue is an issue now, and I think it's going to just continue to be an issue, that there's not enough people in the trades and not enough people in construction. Is that, something that, is that a conversation that you think needs to happen, or what do you think we can do in that space?
Yeah, I personally am very lucky on two fronts when you're talking in that space. I will say, ever since I was probably 5 or 10 years old, I've gone out Christmas shopping every year with my dad so that my mom gets good presents. So we had our annual Christmas shopping trip just on Sunday, so a few days ago. And I did mention to him that it was amazing to me that I never felt like there was something I couldn't do. My brother and I were the first in our family to go to college. He has a master's, I went to law school. So we went on, we did all those, academic things, and I never felt like there was a restriction. My mom was a nurse because nurse, secretary, and teacher were her options when she was growing up.
Right.
But never felt that. And my father credits his mother, who was jack of all trades, construction worker, truck driver. It was just amazing to see. So I feel very fortunate that I didn't see those restrictions. But when I talk to other people, I realize that's not what other people say. And so the more you can give people exposure to it at a young age, the more it's fun to go to Home Depot and build one of their kits on a Saturday, to take your sons as well as your daughters.
Yeah.
I think that's the type of thing that gets kids involved. NAWIC, the National Association of Women in Construction, their education foundation runs a Block Kids program where they're given blocks to build something in construction. Those competitions are run in schools or in aftercare programs. And it's just a fantastic way to show kids that there's something that they could do in construction and talk with women who are doing it. The other way in which I particularly feel lucky is that in the town that I live in, there is a technical high school. And it used to be, when we first moved to town about 20 years ago, that they were looking for kids to try to fill the spots, and they were reaching out as broadly as they could. Now it's incredibly difficult to get into the technical school. And they do everything from automotive and cooking to construction and a variety of different metal trades and subcontractor trades. It's amazing to see those opportunities for kids. And those kids going to the technical high school, Keefe Tech in Framingham, many of them are going on to a 4-year college, but they're coming out with skills. And there's so much information out there that if you can show a student who's got promise in the trades, that they can make a good living, they're not incurring debt in college for no reason, that they can get an apprenticeship where they're being paid. The opportunities out there are amazing. And I think it's great when you've got organizations like Women in Construction, the conference that you're setting up, these things that give people an opportunity to talk about it and realize that the more exposure we give kids, the better. I truly believe I would have done some other type of litigation had I not been in my youth scrapping around my dad's garage, building things and taking things apart and remaking things and just playing with all the tools. That exposure just made it accessible to me. And I think that's a great thing for people to see.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so, I mean, I feel the same way, that that's not something that has been, I grew up in I grew up in a farm. And so all the farm things, that's what I did. I was not so much in construction, but I was, not afraid to, get out in muddy boots and feed things and buck hay bales and all that kind of stuff. So that stuff is not foreign to me at all, but the construction world kind of is. I'm not much of a builder, but maybe that's because I didn't expose myself to it, and it kind of makes me nervous. And, you know, if something's broken, I usually just call my husband, which is very stereotypical, but it's like to be exposed to that and to think about it in that way, that and I was always encouraged to go to college and find your way and do that, and but not never really in the other way in the trades. I know that they just opened, you talked about a trades high school. They just opened something like that here in Billings, Montana, which seems like we probably should have had that a while ago, but that's something that's been really exciting for people to get their kids to go to have that hands-on experience and do something with their hands, and to have a career path when they walk out of their education is tremendous. And so I am in the same space. I think that's going to be something that's incredible opportunity, but we just have to have the conversations about it. So
And not just necessarily a career, but yesterday or this past weekend, I got a new TV, and there's a bracket behind the TV, and the bracket turned out to be too low. And I was putting the TV up with somebody. They said, well, let's just put it on the stand. We won't have to worry about it. And I said, why? Let me run out to the shop. Let me grab my drill. We're going to take off the old bolts. We're going to move this down 3 inches, put it right back into the studs, and the opportunity just to feel comfortable with tools,
yeah,
which I think, and there's a lot more recognition of that. You do find that there are classes at some of the big Home Depot and Lowe's where they invite women to come in and try it out. I always love to tell people that I know, hey, if you got a problem, if something's broke, come over to my house. Like, I love to take you out into the shop. But it's exposure, and it's giving people the opportunity to do it wrong and to do it again and just to feel comfortable. One
yeah.
of the things that's hanging up in the garage at our house is a piece of wood that's got 30 or 40 drill holes in it, but we gave my daughter the drill and, tied her hair back, gave her safety glasses, and let her go at it and have fun. So it's great to see people get the opportunity and touch things and experience it.
Absolutely. The women that inspired this event that I'm hosting in May, I have these 4 really close friends in Missoula, and they're all women, and they're all in construction in some space. And I saw my 2 friends like build their house on their own. And of course, I had help with the big construction pieces, but they planned it. They wrote the plans for it, and then they organized all the construction for it. And my friend Gabby, she was the home inspector in the city for a while, and now she's a project manager for a construction company. But it was something that I hadn't seen until I met them, and just to see them and how they like immediately solve problems, or she comes over here and cuts the egress window for us. It's just like those things are so big and foreign to me. And then when she's doing that, and then it's like, let's celebrate that and let's encourage people to have the conversation about that. Because I think it's just something that might be foreign to people. And now the more that we talk about it, I think it becomes more comfortable for sure. It's just like,
Well,
it's very
I was
similar
gonna
to
say,
like, oh,
I know who I'm hanging out with at your conference. I want to meet these ladies.
oh my gosh, it's going to be really, really fun. They're just amazing people. But it reminds me a lot. So just even that conversation reminds me of, because I've been teaching public speaking and college debate for a lot of years. I mean, people are scared of public speaking, but you don't learn how to do it unless you do it. But it's also the same with building a business, right? Like you have to plan, and then if your plans don't work, you've got to pivot, you've got to do something else, you got to correct it. So it's the not being afraid to test, and not being afraid to get your hands dirty, and not being afraid to like fail at something and then have to fix it. So I think there's some entrepreneur pieces to there too. So I think that's, I don't know, it seems like a little microcosm of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. When I look around my house, there's a pool existing when I bought the house, and we'd put in a new slider. And I called my dad and I said, we never shingled around the slider. We really need to do that. And he came over and we each shingled on the side of the slider, and we got to the top and we did 2 courses of shingles. He showed me how to cut for the roof line. And he said, okay, I'm leaving. You can do the last 5 courses by yourself. Good luck. Send me a picture. And I just said, wow. And 10 o'clock that night, sent him a picture. Here it is, all done. And every time I'm out in the pool, every time I have somebody over new, I said, look at that. I did that. I've got that all. I mean, I love it. It's such a great thing to be able to take pride in. And yeah, that the physicality, seeing like I built that and I designed that.
Yeah.
You know, what I like, just tying it back around to being a lawyer, is sometimes I help those people in construction keep their companies. Sometimes people get upside down in these jobs, or you know, a lot of times it comes back to, as you were saying earlier, those disputes are a lot about misunderstandings. A fair part of my job, while I litigate and I review construction contracts, is risk assessment and talking to people and saying, do you understand where you're at? I always think from an entrepreneurial perspective that is so important, because a lot of entrepreneurs they just go, go, go. Let's do it. Let's get the idea. And I always think it's really valuable, not necessarily to have somebody rein you in, but have somebody sit down and explain to you in words you can understand, use the language that isn't legalese, and sit there and say, these are the things you really need to be concerned about. Hey, I want you to go forth. I want you to sign up a lot of business, but I want you to know when you sign those letters, those contracts, here's 3 things I want you to look for me. And we can develop something better over time, but kind of being able to give that sort of advice on the construction level, again, reminds me of helping out companies like my dad, who was able to do it for 45 years almost before he retired. Although he isn't retiring much, because he's got work at my house to do and work for my mom to do. So he's as busy as ever, even though he's technically retired.
I'm sure. People like that can't really put down the tools, even if the business is closed. So yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh my gosh, what an amazing experience you've had. And I think I just love, and for the listeners out there, I think this is a great example of not only someone that is living their passion and their experience, and I believe that is you, with the combination of the being a lawyer and then also your construction experience, and finding the right niche for that to be of service to people, I think is incredible. And I think that's a great example for the audience of how you can take your passion and turn it into a career. And I think that's amazing. So thank you for sharing your story. I'll ask you one last question before we sign off, but what do you see in the next 10, 15 years in the construction industry with women and involvement, and what, from what you have seen to what do you predict would come in the next 10 years or so?
Well, when I first got into this and I went in the courtroom, the only women in the courtroom were me and the court reporter and maybe the clerk. So we've seen more women in construction law. I see a lot more young women in coming up through NAWIC, the National Association of Women in Construction, Wentworth, you know, the construction college here in Boston. It's fantastic. They're putting out more women in construction. They've got more supports available, and people are starting to talk about the worker shortage, and we need laborers. And this is a career that someone could get into and make good money without a lot of startup costs. It is, can't hide the fact that it's not easy to walk up to a construction company with no experience and get hired for a woman, but there are programs and there are resources available that I think is making that easier. I would see in the next 10 years that we're going to see 14% as the number of women in construction now is going to be higher. Will we make it to 20%? I'm not sure, but I think the more it becomes acceptable, the more we see women leading construction companies and running projects. I absolutely loved, there was a project in Worcester at the YWCA. It was an entirely women-run team that built that. And so the more we publicize that, the more we make it common, it gives people an alternative to say, maybe I'll give that a shot. So
Yeah.
I have high hopes that this will continue, because construction's it's a fantastic way to make a living. It's also, you know, such pride in what people are able to do. And it benefits you not only professionally, but you go home and you can make your house what you want to make it. You can fix that shelf that fell down on your own. There's just so many benefits to it that I love it.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Jess, thank you for coming here and telling your story. So inspirational. And I just am excited for when we all get together in May. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think, I think it's going to be a blast. And I think we're going to have, the thing I like about it is that we're going to have so many different backgrounds, and we're going to talk about the labor shortage. We're going to talk about how to get more people and how to spread the conversation. And I think those are some important things that need to happen in addition to the legal side. It's all important, but we need to have conversations.
Yeah. And you know what I like about the legal side is I'm probably not necessarily going to turn somebody into a legal construction attorney, but there's so many things about what I do, the public speaking aspect, like you were talking about, reading a contract, asking questions, getting confident in how to be in a room where you may be the only woman. I think those type of skills are just fantastic, because you can teach those and empower women to go out and just take charge. And I love it.
Yeah. Assertive is not a dirty word.
It is not.
We gotta start the conversation about that. I love that. Well, Jess,
Awesome.
thank you for coming here, and I look forward to continue conversations with you, and I look forward to having you into my network. I think it's going to be amazing, and I'm excited about the event. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I am too. I really appreciate you having me on, Shelby. It's been a great conversation. Thank you.
Of course, absolutely. And to all you listeners out there, start following us. I have a whole channel dedicated to women in construction. We're building up to this event. We're telling these stories. We're starting the conversation, or at least contributing to the conversation, because the conversation's happening. It's just we're providing a little more visibility. So thank you again. And until next time on the Women in Construction at the Genius Entrepreneur Podcast, I hope you all have a happy holiday.